Chapter 54, the marriage of Krishna and Rukmini, text 34. Shri Sukaruvacha Taya Paritrasa Vikampitangaya Shuchava Shushyan Mukha Rudha Kantaya Katarya Visramsita Hema Malaya Grihita Pada Karuno Yavartata Shri Shukurudacha Taya Paritrasa Vikampatangaya Shujava Shushyan Mukaruda Kantaya Katarya Visramsita Hema Malaya Grihita Pada Karunonya Vartata Shri Shukuruvacha Taya Paritrasa Vikampatangaya Shuchava Shushyan Mukaruta Kantaya Katarya Visramsita Hema Malaya Grihita Pada Karunonya Vartata Shri Shukuruvacha Taya Paritrasa Vikampatangaya Shuchava Shushyan Mukaruta Kantaya Katarya Visramsita Hema Malaya Grihita Pada Karunonya Vartata Please.
Shri Sukha Uvacha Taya Paritrasa Vikampitangaya Shuchava Sushannuka Rudrakantaya Katarya Visramsita Hema Malaya Katarya Vishamsita Hema Malaya Grihita Pada Karunonya Vartata Shri Shukuruvacha Taya Paritrasa Katarya Shri Shuka Uvacha
Daya Paritrasavikam Pitangaya
Daya Paritrasavikam Pitangaya
Shujava Shushyan Karunakantaya
Shujava Shushyan Karunakantaya
Atarya Vishramsita Himalaya
Atarya Vishramsita Himalaya
Vinita Pada Karunonya Vartata
Vinita Pada Karunonya Vartata Shri Shuka Uvacha Daya Paritrasavikam Pitangaya Shujava Shushyan Karunakantaya Atarya Vishramsita Himalaya Vinita Pada Karunonya Vartata
Shri Shukaruvacha.
Shri Shuka Uvacha
Shukadev Goswami said,
Shukadeva Swami said,
Taya, by her, Paritrasa, in total fear, Vikambita, trembling, Angaya, whose limbs, Shucha, out of sorrow, Avashushyat, drying up, Mukha, whose mouth, Rudha, and choked, Kantaya, whose throat, Katarya, in her agitation, Visramsita, disheveled, Hema, golden, Malaya, whose necklace, Grihita, held, Pada, his feet, Karuna, compassionate, Nyavartata, he desisted. Translation. Shukadev Goswami said, Rukmini's utter fear caused her limbs to tremble and her mouth to dry up, while her throat choked up out of sorrow. And in her agitation, her golden necklace scattered. She grasped Krishna's feet, and the Lord, feeling compassionate, desisted. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes the, quote-unquote, worldly rule that one's sister is the personification of mercy. Dayaya Bhagani Murti. Even though Rukmi was wicked and was opposed to his sister's best interest, Rukmini was compassionate toward him, and the Lord shared her compassion. Sri Shukaruvacha Taya Paritrasa Vikampatangaya Shuchava Shushya Mukaruta Kantaya Katarya Visramsita Hema Malaya Grihita Pada Karuno Nivartata. Shukadev Goswami said, Rukmini's utter fear caused her limbs to tremble and her mouth to dry up, while her throat choked up out of sorrow. And in her agitation, her golden necklace scattered. She grasped Krishna's feet, and the Lord, feeling compassionate, desisted. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutadeshana Bhaktivedanta Swami Nidhi. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaur Vajrajaya Nera Vishesha Shanyavadi Pastajyadishtana Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srimati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Is it correct that you have read the verses before this verse? There's a whole series, like 10 or several, which don't have purports. Have you read these verses? There's a whole series of verses before this verse, and they don't have purports. So is it that they have been read? Okay. Yes, so, you know the story. To this point, I assume that by Rukmini's arrangement, his sister Rukmini was to be married against her will to Shishupal, who was a very close friend of Rukmini. And everything was going on. The process of the wedding was going on. These things are quite complex and take considerable amount of time. So the process was going on, and right at a very crucial point, Lord Krishna came in and kidnapped Rukmini right in the middle of it all. She had written to him, requesting him somehow to please rescue her and to marry her, actually. She was completely convinced, even though she'd never met the Lord. Just from hearing about him, she was completely convinced that he was the only possible husband for her. So Krishna responded, and with Krishna, of course, Krishna is not a person he's not a boring person, and he doesn't like to be involved in boring things or just run-of-the-mill ordinary things. Krishna is extremely creative, and so in this case he was very creative also. At the last crucial moment, Krishna just came in and just kidnapped Rukmini in the midst of everyone, and practically literally right out of the hand of Shishupal and the hands of Rukmini, and right there in front of all their big Kshatriya friends and supporters, Krishna just whisked her away, just like that. And then Rukmini, the brother, tried to pursue them, Krishna and Rukmini, and Krishna stopped, confronted Rukmini, and they fought. Krishna defeated him. And Krishna, at least according to Kshatriya code, normally under those circumstances, the Kshatriya would kill his opponent, and that would be the end of it. But Rukmini appealed to Krishna, and with great feeling, with great affection, apparently for her brother, please don't kill him. So what happens from now on, well, you're going to read over the next few days. It's very interesting how Krishna deals with the situation. As we said, he's very creative. And then, well, Then Balaram comes in and speaks in different ways to Krishna and Rukmini. And that is very interesting, actually, how Krishna puts it. Explains, Balaram explains everything. It's a very interesting part of Srimad Bhagavatam. But this part right here, in and of itself, is this verse in very short purport, is also very interesting. Rukmini, despite everything, despite being forced into a situation where she would have spent the rest of her life in practically a captive state, forcibly married to someone who she just had no interest in being married to, and who had a completely different nature to hers. And this would have been basically a lifelong situation. So despite that, and it was all engineered by her brother, despite that, her heart is of such a nature that when she sees that her brother's possibly about to be killed, then she becomes just too overwhelmed with compassion. And here she is, falling at the feet of Lord Krishna, grasping his feet, and her body trembling, her mouth drying up, her throat choked up out of sorrow. And we can just imagine she must have been crying and crying. And one of the previous verses says, she piteously spoke. So her emotional condition was very, very deep. Some people in that sort of situation would say, go ahead, cut his head off and give me his head. Kshatriyas, they're sort of like that. So, yes, many people would say that if the person who has abused them very severely is somehow brought to task, and even this is the system nowadays, at least in America, maybe other countries that still have capital punishment, the death penalty, that the families of the people, the person, the relatives, and people close to the person who was murdered, when the murderer is executed, they are invited to watch. This is official policy. And they often go and they watch the person being electrocuted or having some lethal injection applied to them. This happens. It's happening all the time. In America, I don't know about other places, but it's considered part of the process that the relatives of the victim should be allowed to watch the execution of the killer. But not Rukmini. Not Rukmini at all. She's thrown herself at the lotus feet of Krishna, and she's crying out piteously, just overwhelmed with very powerful emotions. connected with compassion and feeling the suffering of Rukmini. And she's begging Krishna, please don't kill him. So as is pointed out in the purport, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes the worldly rule that one's sister is the personification of mercy. Okay, so that's an interesting point. I don't know to what degree it applies nowadays, but it appears, according to civilized standards, that in so many cases it would be like that. That when the brother is placed in some great difficulty, then the sister feels it so much and expresses very, very great concern. Dayaya Bhagani Murti. The sister is the Murti, the form, the living form of mercy. So that may be there, that is there, according to Vedic standards. But of course we know that Rukmini, she's not just a nice sister, compassionate, affectionate sister. That's not all she is. She is a lot more than that. She is great, pure devotee of the Lord. Of course, she is the eternal associate. She's actually an expansion of Srimati Radharani. So, well, Rukmini, at least in a more sort of Rasika sense, perhaps, she's an incarnation of Satyabhama. Chandravali, Rukmini, is an incarnation of Chandravali, who is said to have spiritual qualifications second only to Srimati Radharani. Perhaps even more than Lalita and Vishaka, but we're talking about people on that level. So Rukmini, that is the level of Rukmini, and of course Chandravali is also an expansion from the goddess. Well, the goddess, certain goddesses of fortune are expanded from her. So in other words, Rukmini's feelings here, it's not simply a matter that she's a nice sister, like some especially nice sister, especially compassionate and affectionate to her poor brother. But her condition, her feelings, they're manifestations of very high spiritual condition, very high spiritual condition. And you'll see, as the discussion goes on, as Lord Balaram pacifies her and preaches to Krishna and sort of chastises Krishna, actually, that Rukmini very quickly becomes pacified, very quickly. According to how it's described in the Bhagavatam, it's like within 1 minute, just a few exchanges, just like that. It might be a minute or two, or it might be less. And then Rukmini is completely happy. Even though Rukmini, as you'll read tomorrow, I guess, he ends up, Krishna punishes him. A death, well, a punishment worse than death for a Kshatriya. Disfigurement and incredible embarrassment. So anyway, though, it's very interesting. Rukmini's emotions. And of course it's not just a matter of her being sister, but she's very, very great, transcendental personality. We see similar situation in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. There's the story there of Ashvatthama being punished at the end of the Battle of Kurukshetra. There are very few survivors, but Ashvatthama was one of the survivors. This is, I think, is it the 9th canto, the 9th chapter, something like that, of the first canto. It's around about there. There are very few survivors, but Ashvatthama survived. He's the son of Dronacharya. So he survived somehow, and even though the battle was lost and the Pandavas won, they all survived. So they take the kingdom. And all the others on the other side, which Ashvatthama was on the other side, Duryodhana and company, they were all dead. And there's no possibility of them ruling. No real possibility. Still, Ashvatthama, out of his enviousness and really demoniac, materialistic mentality, he came and killed the 5 sleeping sons of Draupadi and the Pandavas. So, I think it was Arjuna pursued him and captured him and returned to the place there with Ashvatthama tied up as a captive. And so then the question arose, okay, what shall we do with him? And most of the people there, including Lord Krishna himself, said, just kill him. Just kill him. It's the only suitable thing. Shri Shri Radha Golokananda, Shri Shri Gauratai, Shri Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Even Lord Krishna himself said, just kill him. And of course, Arjuna was agreeable and Bhima agreeable. But then, what happened? Mother Draupadi spoke up. Don't kill him. Don't kill him. And she gave different reasons. And different reasons, like, he's a Brahmin. His father was your guru. So, not guru in the sense that we normally use the term, but he was their military teacher. And the son, in the absence of the father, because Dronacharya had died during the battle, in the absence of the father, the son is the representative of the father. And can even be considered to be practically the father. So she was saying that he's practically your guru. He's the son of your guru. So, he's like that, kind of like your guru. And he's a Brahmin, and you can't do this. And there are different arguments put in opposition to her points. That he's not really a Brahmin, he's a Brahma Bandhu, Dvija Bandhu. Like the friend, the relative of a Brahmin, an associate of a Brahmin, doesn't make the person a Brahmin. So therefore, it doesn't apply. this idea that we should accept him as a brother. See his disqualification. See his disqualification. It's so great that there's no question of taking him to be a Brahmin. So back and forth the discussion went. And then Draupadi, and of course we should also bear in mind that Draupadi, she was a fiery person. She was a fiery person. And she was not, like a docile, passive woman. I don't know how many of those there are, but we hear about them. Just quiet little lady, just anything can happen, and she just accepts it. Draupadi was really not like that. She was a real Kshatriya woman, very powerful and extremely fiery character. And she was urging Yudhisthira regularly while they were in exile. Yudhisthira was much more passive, or at least much more peaceful, and not inclined to really get worked up about how they had been mistreated and so on. But Draupadi was from time to time telling him, come on, how can you just accept how they treated me? You're my husband. And you're just letting them get away with how they treated me. They tried to undress me in public, and you're not doing anything about it. So she was fired. So, but now, in this situation with Ashvatthama, amazing situation, just a matter of an hour or two or a few hours before, this person killed her 5 sleeping little children, small children. Then she is arguing against killing him or even really punishing him. And then she says that you mustn't kill him because if you do, his mother, Kripi, the sister of Kripacharya, his mother will feel disturbed and upset, just like I'm feeling. So I don't want her to feel like I'm feeling. So please, for her sake, don't kill him. So that's Draupadi, another great saintly lady. And this is Rukmini, very great saintly lady. And not just lady, but saintly devotee. See the heart of the devotee. See the heart of the devotee. From the material point of view, it's inconceivable that people's hearts could be in such a condition, such a selfless and compassionate condition. It's completely incredible, actually. But this is Krishna consciousness. This is Krishna consciousness. This is very, very special Krishna consciousness. It's not everyday Krishna consciousness as we know it or see it in other of the devotees we're associating with. This is very exalted Krishna consciousness, but this is Krishna consciousness, actually. That when, as the devotee advances, step by step, the devotee advances. If the devotee practices nicely, very sincerely, very seriously, following the instructions of the spiritual master, following the instructions of scripture, and humbly taking his or her place in the association of devotees, then the devotee progresses. The devotee progresses. Initially, things like karma, krodha, lobha, matsarya, these low qualities, lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, arrogance, fear, ignorance. Initially, these things are removed or lessened and gradually removed. And that can be practically experienced. That can be practically experienced. Srila Prabhupada was asked once, do you do miracles? Like walking on water and making things appear or disappear. These types of so-called miracles. Do you do miracles? And Srila Prabhupada pointed to some of his disciples and said, these are my miracles. And previously, they were just absorbed in the degraded, materialistic way of life, doing all things that are just not to be done at all. But now see they've given it all up. And they've completely dedicated themselves to the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada told the person, these are my miracles. And when you consider, this is certainly much more of a miracle than just somehow manipulating dull matter in some unusual way, like walking on water. Water is just matter, and your body is just matter. And of course we all know that if you get on a boat, you can walk on water. You can cross to the other side of the ocean without getting wet. And it's just some material manipulation. Make things appear, disappear. You know, you can smash something and it'll disappear. You can burn something, it'll disappear. So matter can be manipulated in different ways. But some people, they do these things in unusual ways. They actually walk on the water. Or they actually just go and something either appears or disappears. And people think, oh, must be God. But it's just subtle manipulation of matter. That's all. So Prabhupada made that point, that you call these things miracles, just manipulating matter. In Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada makes the point that the Asta Siddhis, the 8 mystical perfections, they, in many cases, they have already been duplicated by the scientists, passing through things, passing through a mountain. Yeah. So in many cases, they've been duplicated by the materialistic scientists. Even Prabhupada told the story, you may have heard. One young man was living in a village, but then he left the village and went to the Himalayas, and he went to the ashram of some mystic yogi, and he learned mystical powers. And then he came back after some time to the village. And he called everyone, so here I am. I went to the mystical yogi. I learned mystical powers. And he said, I can walk on water. How much will you give me for that? And the people were astonished. You can walk on water. Gee, wow, you're wonderful. But one wise man, elderly wise man, said, you can walk on water? I'll give you 20 paisa. And the young mystical man said, what do you mean 20 paisa? Walking on water, that's worth a lot more than 20 paisa. And the wise man said, no, it's worth 20 paisa. Because for 20 paisa, I can get a ticket for the boat and get carried across, and I won't even get my feet wet. So I'll give you 20 paisa, no more. But to change a person who is deeply materially conditioned, to extract them out of material existence, that is something. And permanently. Sometimes people take vows, I'll stop doing this and stop doing that. And generally it lasts for a very short period of time, because they're just too conditioned and habituated to materialistic ways. But to change a person permanently into something totally different and totally better. So this was Prabhupada's point. This is a miracle. This is a real miracle. And it's a fact. And it's only possible through Krishna consciousness, through mystic power, or hypnotism perhaps, which I suppose is some sort of mystical power. Well, it is, isn't it? One of the Ashtasiddhis is, you can make people do whatever you like. So we could hypnotize Krishna Das Prabhu and tell him, go here, and he goes there. Go there, and he goes there. But that's, and tell him not to do something or to do something that he would normally not do, or something like that. And like this, get the person to do things they wouldn't normally do. You know, sometimes in these hypnotism shows they have, like stage presentations, some hypnotist, they get some like very conservative business person to come on the stage, and then they hypnotize him and get him to do stupid things. Get him to bark like a dog, or tweet like a bird, things he just wouldn't do, that he just wouldn't do anyway, what to speak of in front of a few hundred people. But because he's hypnotized, he does some things that he really wouldn't do otherwise. But then the hypnotism, the effect comes off, and he won't do it again. And he may be shocked, I did that. But Krishna consciousness changes people very drastically and permanently. Therefore, that's a real miracle. And ultimately, it brings people, like even extremely degraded people, even extremely violent people, it brings them to the point of being very peaceful and very loving devotees. Draupadi, and here we're seeing Rukmini, how loving they are, how soft-hearted they are. Consider Mrigarari, the hunter. He was half killing the animals. And he enjoyed it. He enjoyed watching them slowly die in terrible pain. That was his enjoyment. So what sort of person is that? It's too shocking, actually. These people who enjoy torturing other people. It's just too shocking. So far beyond the human standard of life. But Mrigarari, through the influence of Narada Muni, he became so soft-hearted, he would not even hurt an ant. When Narada Muni came back a little later with Parashara Muni to visit Mrigarari to see how he was doing, then it's described, of course, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Prabhupada talks about it in many places, that when Mrigarari saw Narada Muni approaching from a little distance, he came running out to greet him and to just throw himself at the lotus feet of his Savior. And as he's running out, part of the way out, he stops and starts hopping around in a very awkward fashion, and it looks strange. What is really going on? And then he starts running again. So they asked him, what happened? You were running, you stopped, you started jumping around, then you ran again, what happened? And Mrigarari said, yes, I was running to meet you, but then I saw a stream of ants across the road, across the way, and I didn't want to step on any of them. So I was very carefully stepping through to avoid hurting any of the ants, and when I got through, I ran again. So Parashara congratulated Narada Muni. You are such a touchstone. This person was so bad, just too bad. But now you've turned him into such an extremely gentle and kind person. What a devotee you are, Narada Muni. So this is Krishna consciousness. This is Krishna consciousness, and gradually devotees, as they progress, then gradually, step by step, the consciousness, the attitudes, the emotions, all these things change. First of all, in the sense of becoming less lusty, less prone to become angry or envious. These things reduce. But eventually coming to this point where there's extreme compassion, extreme kindness, which from the material point of view is completely inexplicable, inconceivable, and it just, really, it doesn't happen. It really doesn't happen, hardly happens. But through the influence of Krishna consciousness, it happens. And this is why Rukmini, it's not really just a matter that she's the sister and sisters are just like that. But it's her Krishna consciousness. She's very amazing, kind-hearted devotee of the Lord. Hare Krishna. Any comment or question? Sundaram.
Krishna, you said that Rukmini is the expansion of Chandravali, right?
That what?
She is Chandravali in Krishna.
Rukmini, yeah, Rukmini.
Is there any particular pastime that she exhibit that makes her like Chandravali and what?
Well, Rupa Goswami gives elaborate description in Lalita Madhava of how Rukmini was born, and then Bhishmaka's relative, Bhishmaka's the father, Bhishmaka's relative was Chandrabhanu, who's one of the Brijvasis. Yeah. Chandrabhanu. Vrishabhanu is the father of Radharani. Chandrabhanu is the father of Chandravali. So Rupa Goswami explains it elaborately, not just about her, about different of the gopis, but in her case, she was born as the daughter of Bhishmaka. But then Chandrabhanu, who was related, had no children. And he appealed to Bhishmaka, please let me have your daughter. Because Bhishmaka also had, Rukmi was older, he already had at least one child, I don't know if there were more. So Bhishmaka agreed and gave Rukmini to Chandrabhanu as like an infant. And Chandrabhanu named her Chandravali. So she grew up as a Brijvasi, as one of the gopis. Yeah. But then after Krishna left Vrindavan, and all of Vrindavan was thrown into chaos, then Bhishmaka asked for his daughter back. And so she was returned to, what's the name of their place? Huh? Yeah, Kundi. So Chandravali was returned, and when she returned, by the influence of Yoga Maya, everybody forgot that she had been away, and everybody thought she had always been there, and had always been Rukmini. Yeah, this is how Srila Rupa Goswami explains, and he explains the same in different ways about others, of the gopis, and that therefore, he says, therefore, the queens, sometimes they're taken to be expansions, but at least of the gopis, but at least in the cases of some, like some of these mentioned, and quite a number of them actually, they were not just expansions of gopis, they were actually gopis. They were actually gopis. But then when they left Vrindavan, to some degree they lost the, certain important or very special parts of the Vrindavan consciousness. Even though they loved Krishna wholeheartedly, but not to the same degree as in Vrindavan. So like, Rukmini, when Krishna told her that he was thinking that he would leave her, she fainted. She didn't chastise him because she was in a more sort of passive condition. Yeah. But, the same sort of idea is explained about Lalita. She became Jambavati, and it's made a very amazing story, how she became Jambavati. As Jambavati, she had dolls of Radha and Krishna, but they didn't know that it was Radha and Krishna. People just thought it's just some young man and young woman. And she would just all day just play with these dolls, have them meeting and doing different things. So, yeah. So that's what Rupa Goswami says. Yeah, and Lalita Madhava.
Satyabhama is the other one.
Satyabhama's Radharani. So when Krishna married Satyabhama, well, Bhishmaka, the father of Rukmini, had already said when they were to be married, or when they were married, Krishna and Rukmini, that, no, okay, you can have my daughter, but she must be your first queen. And you must not associate with any of your other queens unless Rukmini gives permission. And Krishna agreed. Therefore, Chandravali and Vrindavan's in the second position, but in Dwaraka she's in the first position. At least on Lalita Madhava. Satyabhama can't meet with Krishna because Rukmini won't give permission. And eventually, Satyabhama tries to commit suicide. But Krishna saves her. And then Rukmini gives permission. All right, you can associate together. It's quite a story. It's really quite a story. Any other comment or question? Krishna, yes.
Perhaps I hope I'm not bringing your level of discussions because you're discussing very high stuff. My question is, Maharaj, you explain about the soft-heartedness of a devotee.
The which?
The soft-heartedness, yes, by virtue of the devotion to Krishna.
Yeah.
So, and Draupadi, and then also Mrigari. Allow me to add, Maharaj, then there's also Gandhari and Kunti Devi. When Gandhari saw that Kunti Devi was had children, she became envious.
Right.
So Prabhupada comments that because although Gandhari she had the title of distinguished chastity.
Yeah.
But Prabhupada said that Kunti was superior in her qualities because she was a devotee. She didn't become angry when Gandhari became angry.
Yes. Well, of course, Gandhari is a very interesting character, and she's known for her chastity, extreme chastity. She's not so much known for being a great devotee. Certainly not like Kunti. She cursed Krishna, right? She cursed Krishna. She cursed Krishna that he would die at a certain time. After some number of years, I forget the details. Something like 26, 30 years. At some point, you'll die because of killing her, or being sort of, implicated in the killing of her children. And Krishna left the planet at that time, in terms of the curse. Of course, Krishna leaves when he wants.
Yes, Maharaj. So my question was, Draupadi, she also she wanted the husband to desist from killing Ashwatthama also. So, but sometimes the devotees are confronted in a situation where they have to also become angry. Although they're soft-hearted, sometimes they have to, for example, they confront people who are offenders, the devotees, so then also they have to become angry. So So when there's
Yes.
some conflict, they also have to be angry. How does it?
It has to be appropriate, not just angry, like you just lose it and go berserk. Yeah. It has to be appropriate. And that's the question here. And it was also the question with Ashwatthama. What's appropriate? And so they discussed, killing is appropriate. But then, different considerations, and in the end they didn't kill him. They sort of did the same type of thing, actually. And here, it's Krishna's conclusion not to kill him, but then he disfigures him. So it was appropriate. And then Balaram came and explained it all in different ways to Rukmini and to Krishna. And it's very nice. So yes, of course, in certain circumstances, it is inappropriate to remain peaceful and it's okay and don't worry about it. In certain cases. But, and it's appropriate, the right thing to do is become angry. But it has to be appropriate. Yes. Because when people become angry, then the tendency is to overdo it. Yeah. And, overly, excessively punish the person. Yeah.
That's something else to ask. Right, in some verses before, we had when the Ravana was to come. He hasn't come yet. Rukmini was feeling some kind of vibrations in the body, in the right hand side. So Prabhupada comments that for a lady, when there's some vibrations like that in the left hand side, that's auspicious.
Left-hand side,
Left-hand side.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So Maharaj, there's also superstitions that exist, that sometimes newcomers in Krishna consciousness also come with different kind of superstitions. But here we accept it because Bhagavatam says so, in this particular instance. So, Maharaj.
Well, there are such things as omens. And in the first canto, when Arjuna returns from Dwaraka, following the disappearance of Krishna, and informs Yudhisthira that Krishna's disappeared. Yudhisthira, if I remember correctly, it's Yudhisthira is questioning Arjuna. Arjuna looks distraught. Yudhisthira is questioning him. What happened? Why? Why are you feeling like that? And anyway, there's mention that I think it's Yudhisthira says, I've noticed that inauspicious animals are circumambulating me. Auspicious animals, something like they're avoiding me. And there is thunder without clouds and things like this. So there's these are inauspicious omens. Of course there is superstition, but there's also inauspicious omens. Samharata, when the bad karma is building up in the sort of the vicinity, and it means some bad thing is like, some bad karma is really going to happen. So there's like a prelude, a build-up of bad karma in the environment. And different things happen. And people who know the science of omens, they'll be able to understand, something's going to happen. like, we were driving along in Russia a couple of years ago, a few years ago, like 3. And the devotees had bought some land to have like a village, a devotee village, on the edge of an existing village. And we were going to look at the land. We're driving through the village, and a black cat crossed the road in front of us. The driver stopped, turned the car around 360 degrees, and drove on the same road. About seconds later, it's just a small village, seconds later, another black cat crossed the road in front of us. Really? And the driver stopped before, like the path of the cat, and turned around 360 degrees and drove on. And would you believe, seconds later, a third black cat crossed the road. Really? Really? Wow, and the driver did the same thing. And we were just, we were astonished. We didn't know what to think. So, but you know what happened? The village people, stimulated by the Russian Orthodox Church, created incredible opposition to our devotees being there. Destroyed a house. Destroyed a house. And got the law involved. Because in Russia, the thing is, among many things, you can't buy land legally. It's impossible to buy land legally. You can only buy land illegally. Because the law is such. And what it means is, if people really want to get you off, they can get you off. Yeah. It's, the intricacies of Russian law and the corruption. And so the devotees lost the land. And they invested thousands of dollars. They were building a village. They lost the whole thing. It's gone. And the next thing the people did, because the church was behind it, was bring the court case about the Bhagavad Gita. It was the same place, Tomsk, which they lost. So, I've been thinking about Mauritius. Here, things are so favorable. It's incredible. It's just too incredible. The only problems we have here are ourselves. Otherwise, there's nothing else. We are our only enemies or potential enemies. That's it. It's just so vividly clear to people who see some other situations. Yeah. So anyway, the thing is, there is a science of omens actually. And Subhag Maharaj, you know him? From Bengal, one of our senior devotees. He was telling me, we were discussing omens several years ago, and he was telling me some of his experiences, that he went with 2 other devotees, so there's 3 of them, on life membership to visit some wealthy person. They knocked on the door. The man opened the door, saw that there were 3 of them, slammed the door closed, and wouldn't open it. Because there were 3 of them. It's inauspicious. It's an omen. Some days later, Subhad Maharaj and one other devotee went, just two of them, and the man was very nice, and let them in, and became a member, and donated. And he told me some other stories about omens. Really amazing. Yeah.
You know, like coming in the Hindu traditions, you know, in the society.
Yeah.
Lot of beliefs like that.
Oh yes.
There's lots of beliefs like
Huge.
But you know, but more like in the Bhagavatam, like when the two brothers were born, Hiranaksha and Hiranyakashipu, makes the point that the bad weather was there, and that is indicative of bad progeny or bad similarity, people taking birth.
Right.
So we believe those kind of indications that are given in Bhagavatam, but in our culture, in your culture, there's different kind of beliefs.
Oh, I know.
So which one we tell people, well, this is alright, this is not alright.
Hinduism, you know, is full of this. Full of it. It's amazing. Yeah, auspicious, inauspicious. What day you do things. You know, the day for doing parikrama. You must do it this day, starting this time. Yes, well, we should, ideally we should find out what Prabhupada, the way he dealt with these things. Like Prabhupada didn't travel on Thursdays, usually. Yeah. Because it's inauspicious according to the Vedic omen system. But he said, what you can do, you can pack your bags on Wednesday and put them outside the door. And then it's considered that you started the journey on Wednesday. And Prabhupada wouldn't travel on Ekadasi. Generally wouldn't travel on Ekadasi. So there were a few things that Prabhupada observed like that. But the majority he didn't. You know, if you go through Hari Bhakti Vilas, shaving, you can shave on this day and that day, but not on various other days. It's complex.
Yeah, this one, even giving initiation, like there's a date that you can give initiation, but you can't. But then in our society, the days when devotees are free.
Yeah. And, you know, good days for weddings. And you get these devotee astrologers, you know, look, oh, not on this day, on that day. The way I see it is that, you know, these devotee householders, they need to make a living. So, you know, there's no real harm if they do a little astrology and, you know, and they take some donations for that. But I don't think it's very important. You know, even Prabhupada, as a sannyasi, performed wedding ceremonies, a few, in the beginning. And, you know, according to, what to speak of omens, but according to just rules and regulations, sannyasis can't really do weddings. It's just, you know, they have to be done by householders. But Prabhupada did because he had no choice. Yeah. So yes, the answer is we should research and find out what Prabhupada took seriously and what he didn't, and then try and apply that. Otherwise you get caught up. You get caught up because, you know, when you get into it, it's fantastically detailed. What's auspicious and what isn't auspicious. It's fantastically detailed.
If you allow me to say, sometimes you can, following those things can also hamper our duty.
Yes.
For example, say there's eclipse, and we
Yeah.
come from Mangalati, and we see that we've got some friends or new people from Darshan, from Mangalati, and when they come, the curtain is closed because it's eclipse. So then I find it's hampering the preaching instead of...
Yeah, well, it shouldn't. be applied like that.
Yes.
Shouldn't hamper. Yeah. Shouldn't.
So those rules and regulations, like Prabhupada said, if you were to follow them, then you won't come out of the washroom in the morning for several hours.
Yes, it's too complex if you really want to get into it. Yeah. And the things you can go to hell for, eating buffalo yogurt, and many other things. Wearing a dhoti in a certain way, extinguishing the fire of the ghee lamp. These are things you can go to hell for.
Eating eggplant in Kartik. By eating eggplant in Kartik.
You know what to eat on Ekadasi. Can't eat carrots, can't take honey, can't take eggplant, tomatoes. Prabhupada didn't follow these things. Srila Prabhupada Ki
Jai.
Shri Maharaj Ki Jai.